Matt?
Yes.
Now,
Our first item up on our list is a discussion regarding our currently in place short-term rental ban, which expires April 30th, 2020. Obviously, there's a lot of options on the table. It can be extended as is. We can create a modified order that opens things up a little bit with restrictions, or if nothing is done, then the ban is set to expire on April 30th, and if we don't extend it or come up with a new one, that's what will happen. I forwarded everyone an email from Roger Craddock, the city manager of Coos Bay, setting forth his council's opinion on what the county should do, and then I have a draft order which we looked at in the last meeting, which is just simply extending it for a period of time. So Bob will give you that. And
yeah, I've seen it already.
okay, everything else.
Did you want to go ahead and read Roger's email for the benefit of anybody that?
For Roger's
Yeah.
email?
Yeah.
Okay. From Roger Craddock, City Manager of Coos Bay. The Coos Bay City Council met last night at the request of a local hoteler. They discussed the fact that you and your fellow county commissioners were considering easing the county's restrictions on short-term rental establishments and whether or not the council should rescind their resolution asking local short-term rental establishments to limit their rentals to only those who meet certain criteria. The request brought about a lively discussion with the council trying to balance the potential threat of the pandemic and spread of illness to our community and the business/economic interests of our citizens. Sadly, the economic devastation caused by the necessary pandemic precautions are blatantly observable. At the conclusion of the discussion, it was clear that the health and safety of our citizens was the foremost priority. The council chose to leave Resolution 20-07 in place for now. They plan to revisit the issue at their meeting on May 5th, 2020. The council asked me to share with you and your fellow commissioners that should you decide to ease the restrictions listed in Order 20-03-014L, that they respectfully request you consider putting in place requirements encouraging lodging staff and guests to maintain social distancing, require lodging staff to wear face masks, and require lodging establishments to provide face masks to their guests with a request that guests wear them when in public. Additionally, as the governor's executive order closed all pools and spas, they request that lodging establishments with pools and spas not allow access guests to those facilities. While the state and various local governments may begin lifting restrictions in the coming weeks, that doesn't mean that we can let our guard down yet. There are some organizations, like the World Health Organization, who are concerned that there could be a deadly resurgence if restrictions are lifted too soon and or if precautions are no longer taken. Lastly, I wanted to share with you that the City of Coos Bay is partnering with Southwestern Oregon Workforce Investment Board, SWAB, and hopefully organizations such as Rotary and Zonta will help purchase 50,000 single-use face masks which we intend to provide to local stores to be utilized by shoppers during the pandemic as another precaution to prevent the spread of C-19. The cost for 50,000 single-use face masks is currently $20,000. Per Kyle Stevens at SWAB, some of these face masks can be made available to businesses like the lodging establishments at his cost. I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to ask the county to partner with us in purchasing additional masks for our community. Please feel free to contact me, Roger. Okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, so not everybody jump in here at once.
So,
We have I've been wrestling not so much with just local hotels and motels, but with abandoned dunes. They have people fly in their personal jets and come from all over the place, all over the world, actually. And I would hope, and I assume they would, exercise extreme caution with their guess if we happen to open up for hotel, motel, RV parks, in that they would maintain all of the requirements put out by the federal and state government, as well as possibly have takeout meals for their guests inside of their rooms. And do that as well as, wherever else they may be, getting teed up at the first tee, that kind of stuff, and maintain their social distancing. Because but in the meantime, we have 600 people that work there out of work. And the only 3 cases we've had so far are at Shutter Creek Correctional Institute, which was apparently brought in from the outside up at Coffee Creek in the Portland general area. That's where that person came from, I guess. So we are doing quite well. I think the rest of the coast is doing quite well. Some of the areas along the I-5 corridor are not so good, but I don't know how to limit it to certain groups or certain geographic areas of people. I'm struggling with that.
I'm not sure that we could effectively do that. 2 things I'd like to say. One is that I've had some conversations with Bandon Dunes about minimizing the risk, and they said they are fully prepared to comply with social distancing to the extent possible. We all know you can't do that 100% of the time. That they would encourage their guests to stay on the dunes property, and they would not have sit-down dining, but they would have takeout that would go back with instructions that people go back to their rooms and have the takeout there. I can't remember, they had some way of minimizing social distancing between the caddies and or maximizing social distancing between the caddies and the clients. I think mainly just meant that the clients would get their own golf clubs rather than have the caddies hand them to them as they normally do.
You would assume they'd have a canister of hand wipes too.
Yeah, and there were several other things, but it was quite well thought through, I thought, and they would like to be able to reopen if we see fit. They understand. They say they understand at least the dilemma we have as commissioners. I thought that was very thoughtful of them. I would like to see them up and running again. As Bob pointed out, that's 600 people that currently don't have jobs. I've done a thing here regarding the new cases we have on a day-by-day basis, and I think it's reasonably accurate. I go clear back to the 1st of March with it, and it shows that for the first 3 weeks of March, we had onesies and twosies, and a few times it would get to 7, then it would drop down to 0, but never got very high. And then all of a sudden, like around the 18th, 17th, 18th, and 19th, it started compounding, and we got into the 20s. And that lasted through the 24th. And then in the week starting the 25th of March, it doubled again. And all of a sudden the cases were up in the 50s. As a matter of fact, for the week starting the 25th of March, there were 57 new cases in the state of Oregon. The following week, the first 7 days of April, I say there are 57, when I said 57, it was an average of 57 new cases a day in Oregon during the first week or the last week of March. Starting the first week of April, that increased to an average of 70 new cases per day in Oregon. The peak being 100 cases in one day. that diminished then in the following week to 58. And again, this week, although we have this full 7 days hasn't played out, the 6-day average is about 54. So it seems to me like we're headed in the right direction statewide, for whatever that's worth. It gives me a little more comfort, I believe, in thinking that we could relax a little bit, provided that if things take a serious turn for the worse, we have to shut things down again. But I do think we need to get our economy going, and to that end, I would be for either letting our order end, or if we do feel like we need to extend it for a week, and then rescind it, provided that the short stay institutions follow the guidelines as outlined by Roger and perhaps others that we might wish to add to that. I've talked to the leadership of Bandon. They are in favor of rescinding or ending the restrictions on short stay accommodations. I talked to Court Boyce from Curry County. He thought they should be lifted. I don't know that he was speaking. I don't think he was speaking for the other two commissioners, so I don't know about that. I talked to Chris Boyce, a commissioner from Roseburg, and his question was, could we do it yesterday? And Lane County, I don't think has any restrictions.
Correct.
So that would be a block of counties that would run from the California border to Lincoln County, all of whom appear interested in rescinding or not having the short stay restrictions that have been imposed.
In talking to Commissioner Yamamoto this morning from Tillamook County, he said that they were going to have a coordinated effort between Lincoln, Tillamook, Clatsop, and Columbia counties and try and open all at the same time.
They have a different issue up there than we do.
Mm-hmm.
We were a bit crowded over the spring break. They were drowning in tourists.
Yeah.
And I think they get a lot more drop by for short stay than we do.
Yeah, they get them from Portland area.
The other thing, the coast is unique. Other areas of states, by and large, haven't done this.
I also talked to Mayor Mary Shammerhorn from Bandon this morning, twice actually, and she was, although she didn't speak for the total council, she was in favor of following whatever we do.
I think they would.
Mm-hmm. That's what she told me
They
anyway.
apparently has chosen to not, but that's fine. They're going to review it on the 5th.
Mm-hmm. And I talked to Commissioner Boyce like you did. I didn't know you'd talked to him, but I talked to him this morning also. He called roughly about 8 o'clock, and we talked, and it seemed that he was wanting to do a coordinated opening between us and Curry, Douglas, etc.
I agree with that to a point. I don't think we have to all do it on the same day and the same hour. I think if we do it in within a week of each other, it would be okay.
That was just his thoughts
I think
about
it's
it.
easier for one county to act and get the others to follow than to coordinate everything.
Mm-hmm. That was just his thoughts, though.
Yeah.
I think there frankly will be less attention brought to it if we just quietly, let this expire. What we don't want to do is draw a bunch of tourists to the area, right?
Yeah.
But the county's going to have to reopen for business at some point.
Right.
And so, I talked to somebody from Bay Area Hospital today. I've talked to healthcare providers. I've talked to hoteliers, and I've talked to city council people, and explained what we were talking about and what we were thinking, and explained about Roger's request for the masks. And everybody thinks it seems reasonable and thinks that we will be able to handle this. So I don't have any serious concerns still out there. Of course, we don't want any cases, but when you look at the statistics up and down the coast, and I know that at least Bob has heard me say this, there is no statistical difference in the incidence of cases between counties that shut down their short-term lodging and counties that didn't.
Mhm.
And as one of you already mentioned, it was only the coast that actually shut down lodging.
Right.
I think it's time for us to let this just go ahead and expire. And if we want to, I think we should just send out maybe a public statement saying that we've let it expire, and we encourage all hoteliers to have masks and provide masks for their visitors. I don't know how much enforcement we could actually do on going out and making sure that everybody was getting a mask. But if you want to make that in order, I'm open to it.
I would move that we let the order lapse, sending out a public notice telling people locally of that, and encouraging the hotels and RV facilities to provide masks and encourage social distancing, keep and close their spas and pools. I know that Bandon Dunes intends to do that. I know that the new RV park on the Lower Bay intends to do that.
Yeah. I think do we want to go with spas and pools, or just say to, close all common areas? I don't know. We'll probably better just stick with spas and pools.
I think common areas is a little hard because you got Bandon Dunes. I don't know how too many different ways to interpret that, I believe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, common areas where social distancing can't be maintained and, and more than 10 people. But I think you're right. I think we just go with this.
Why would you be in a hot tub if you had to maintain social distancing?
We're going to all pretend you didn't say that.
It's too late.
Immortalized on the internet.
All right. I'll go ahead and second it, if you like. Discussion?
I'd like to
All
say
those in
that
favor? Go ahead, Bob.
discussion about maintain the hotel motels, RV parks would maintain their social distancing. Staff would have face masks. They would wipe down the bathrooms, et cetera. Guests would be asked to wear face masks, and the closing of the pools and spas.
Okay. Do you think we should just put that in a press release that we send out?
I would hope so. It gives some
I would
guidelines.
recommend that all those things happen.
What was that?
I think that's
County Commissioner
totally
recommend
reasonable.
those things.
Okay, there's a second on that one.
I'll
Are
second.
you adding it in? We could add that in. No, we have a problem right now
Really?
with the way that that's went. Is that a motion to amend then, Bob? Or
Yeah,
you
yes,
accepting John to accept
I would
the
amend the
amendment?
motion if I can. Do I have a
Well,
second
yeah.
on the
John,
amendment?
will you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes,
Yes?
for discussion.
And as the second, I will also accept it. So that's the motion now includes those other items. All right.
Aye.
Any other discussion? Aye.
Aye,
Bob?
aye.
All right. Motion carries. Okay,
Works for me, yeah.
thanks, everyone.
Number 2, huh?
Number 2 is a letter on Douglas County letterhead here, signed by the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. It's a joint letter to the governor seeking consent to a Phase 1 reopening of Douglas, Coos, Curry, Jackson, and Josephine counties effective April 25th, 2020, consistent with the federal guidelines for, I guess, what is called a Phase 1 reopening, and they're seeking all the counties named there to jointly sign this letter, and once again, it's a request to the governor to allow that to happen pursuant to federal guidelines.
Okay, so for the benefit of everybody listening in, what is the basics of Phase 1?
I can read the letter if you'd
Okay.
like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because I haven't, to be honest, fully researched what Phase 1 of the federal reopening plan entails, but the letter reads as followed. Governor Brown, thank you for organizing the call yesterday and providing a forum for county commissioners to express our concerns and ask questions. As you well know, the main topic of conversation centered around Oregonians, allowing Oregonians an opportunity to get back to work and to get the economy moving again. You have said you are in favor of a regional approach to reopening the economy as long as certain criteria were met. We understand the concern of an increase in COVID-19 cases once restrictions are eased and agree that a strategic approach in getting things reopened is necessary. On the call, you and your staff outlined 3 necessary planning steps needed to be in place before regional approval would be considered. Those steps include 3 components of gating criteria, 3 components of our core state of preparedness, and a 3-phase reopening strategy. 3 components of gating criteria include a declining number of people with symptoms, a declining number of cases, and adequate hospital capacity. In southwestern Oregon, there have been very few cases, but where we have seen the most cases, there certainly has been a reduction in reported cases since the peak. We have seen a decline in the number of tests being administered as the number of people with symptoms has decreased. We also believe that we have adequate testing and hospital capacity, as well as a thorough contingency planning should cases begin to increase at any point. The 3 components of core state preparedness include robust testing and contact tracing, healthcare system capacity, including PPE and surge capacity, and plans for health and safety. As you know, Douglas County implemented the first drive-through testing opportunity in the state. Douglas County has also funded a team of epidemiologists who have worked diligently to trace contacts of all positive test results. Coos, Curry, Jackson, and Josephine County each still have very few cases and capacity to test anyone with symptoms in the foreseeable future. All 5 counties currently have healthcare capacity to manage the caseload and beyond. But if other medical procedures are not allowed very soon, they may not have, as hospitals have limited ability to bear the financial burden of being out of business. Our plans for health and safety are still to require social distancing, including the requirement to wear face masks and heightened sanitation requirements for any situation where distancing can't be maintained. Examples including beauty salons, barbershops, etc. To encourage those who can continue to work from home to do so, to require anyone who is sick to stay at home, and to provide free testing to any person referred by a medical professional. We will constantly monitor conditions and immediately to limit and mitigate, I believe I mean to say, and act immediately to limit and mitigate any rebound in reported cases. We are asking your consideration to consent to a Phase 1 reopening in Douglas, Coos, Curry, Jackson, and Josephine counties effective 4/25/2020 under the federal Phase 1, under the federal guidelines. The exact parameters of the federal Phase 1 guidelines, I am not 100% certain.
So I didn't hear anything about restaurants. Maybe I missed it.
There's no explicit mention of that. It
They
simply
talked
says,
about salons and things, but in the
right, well,
letter-
it sounds like me like those are situations where their social distancing can't be maintained. I suppose at a restaurant it could be, maybe if it was set up appropriately. I'm not sure.
Yes. My understanding is the restaurants are presenting plans for how they can effectively have social distancing and keep people safe.
I read that about their restaurant association.
Orla, yeah.
Uh-huh, okay, I read that this morning. I haven't heard anything from the governor's office about allowing that, however.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't she, in her conversation with us, allude to the restaurateurs getting together and making a recommendation?
I think I remembered it, yes.
So, hey,
But
some might be curious if, I don't know what harm it would do to sign that letter. Someone may be smarter than I in figuring that out, but if the state doesn't think we match up with their requirements, then they can tell us what we need to do, and we can fix it. I don't see much damage in sending a letter out.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And we need to have a plan in by tomorrow. I appreciate the fact that Douglas County took the lead for our region,
Yes.
but it looks reasonable to me.
I think Chris writes a nice letter. He has a nice way of saying things. So I'm in favor of our signing the letter.
I would be too.
I move then that we authorize our chair to sign the letter prepared by Douglas County.
I think we all three have to sign.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I withdraw my motion and move that we all three sign the letter.
I second.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The most recent version I have, Josephine County passed it, and they have signed on that same version. So I'll send that over to you, Bobby, so you can put all our signatures on
Okay,
that.
Bobby, you just want to use my stamp, please?
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and please use my stamp too.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to item 3. This was sent to me by Commissioner John Sweet. It is an action plan for phased opening of county parks. It appears that our Parks Department has come up with a plan for a phased reopening, and there's a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So, John Sweet, you want to explain a little bit about this document and what we need to be discussing here?
It is pretty preliminary. There's no starting date envisioned for that. And I think there's a couple things we might want to do in addition to what Parks had already put down. But mainly, this was just to put out to the other two commissioners what work's been done there and what the thinking is at Parks, and invite you to add or subtract from it or change it, so that when the time comes, we are prepared to move ahead. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about when the time might come. So that's all. I didn't need anything other than just to make you aware that the Parks is doing this, and that we would welcome any additional input you care to make. But then to the subject of when do we open the parks?
Well, we were all three on the telephone conference with the State Parks Director here at 1 o'clock today. And they're talking
I was so
about,
impressed that we all had the same opinion.
well, most of the different commissioners across the state had the same opinion that I noticed. At least one, maybe two counties are still open. Lynn County is still open. But it kind of bothered me, they're talking about May 15th as day use only. I would hope by the end of the month we start day use, and by the middle of May we would be having camping before we get to Memorial Day. I don't know, what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I agree.
I would like to see us open the parks no later than May the 8th, with either allowing occupancy of one of every other slot, or 1 out of 3 slots, subject to some modification depending upon the lay of the ground in the different parks.
You're talking May 8th for camping?
I don't mean May. I mean, May 8th, that we could start camping,
Okay.
and that we would. I would like to see us instead of going in 2-week periods between phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. I think that's a bit awkward. I'd suggest, and I'll explain why I think that in a minute. I'd suggest that we hold on to phase 1 for the month of May, switch to phase 2 for June, and then if everything's still go ahead, we go to phase 3 on the 1st of July. And the reason I say that...
That's just for county parks?
That's just for county parks.
So we'd miss Memorial Day weekend?
Yes, we would.
Now, we still don't know, like in Riley,
Half our spaces would be open.
yeah, but we still don't know on Riley whether the Forest Service is gonna open the dunes or not, so
I think the Forest Service will do whatever we want.
that'll be interesting.
That'd be the
we may
first
not
time,
want to
huh?
open Riley. That may be an exception.
Okay, and I did hear, when I had my discussion with Commissioner David Yamamoto from Tillamook, he relayed to me that he had a discussion with Forest Service, I don't know whom, but they were willing to do what Tillamook County wanted, so maybe John is correct.
We're both getting our information from the same source, so it
Oh,
doesn't
okay,
mean that
all right. That may not be the case down this way.
may not be the case down this way. And I maybe we want to have. I do think that of all our parks, the one that will be a problem, most likely to be a problem, will be Riley.
Mm-hmm. So, now, John, you were the one that contacted the Forest Service about whether they were going to close the dunes or not.
Right.
Have you been able to contact that person again to see when they might open?
I've tried to call her several times, but it's been about a week, and I've not, but I'll try again.
Yeah, that'd be good to know what they're going to do.
Yeah. I don't think it'd be any sense opening it up. Well,
Yeah, Riley would just be kind of a day use thing otherwise, because they wouldn't be able to go out in the dunes.
so they could come down and rev their engines.
Run around inside the park, and
Yeah.
that wouldn't excite them probably too much.
Well, I don't know. And then the reason I suggest not doing a 2-week thing is that, I think it's going to take a period of time to tell whether or not everything's working or not working. And so if you don't know until Sunday evening of the second week that you're really in a position to open up the following week to change to phase 2 or to the next phase, it doesn't give you much time. So I was thinking about having each phase last about a month. And so you could, a couple of weeks into it, make a decision what you're going to do about the next phase. And then open up reservations for the next phase at that point in time, not before. And make reservations with the provision that in the event we have a serious resurgence of COVID-19, reservations will be canceled.
I'm really thinking starting May 1 and then go for 2 weeks and see how it is. And then, or 2.5 weeks, and then open it up for distance what do you call distance camping, every other one, or however you described it?
When you say you start May 1, you're talking about day use only? Or
Yeah, yes, and then camping 2.5 weeks later.
You're talking about starting camping later than I am then.
Well, let me look here in the calendar. So if we opened up on Friday the 1st for day use, and then opened maybe the 16th for camping with distancing. Let's see, would that give us 2 weeks? Yeah. Even actually the 19th or something, like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, the 20th. Then we would know whether we're going to have an increase in cases or not. That would give us 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 days to know. And we could go to distance camping on the 20th or 21st. Just throwing it out there. Discussion.
I hold it, you.
Is everybody looking at the calendar?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
What if, I mean, we've been meeting a lot, you guys. Is there any reason why we couldn't reopen it and then start monitoring the situation?
Not really.
Now, is there any state requirement that we can't order it or open it? I thought there was. I thought the governor said we can't open parks.
In Resolution 2012, the governor's resolution?
Yeah, resolution, or Executive Order 2012 states that all public and private campgrounds should be closed throughout the duration of that order.
Except the state parks director was saying, well, they're talking about, not doing, but talking about starting with day use on the 15th of May. But some counties have never shut down their parks.
And not their
And
campgrounds
they
either.
nothing happened to them.
Well, not their was it their campgrounds or parks? Because the executive order
They're
did
camping,
not
I
shut
believe.
down parks. It left it in the director of the Oregon State Parks' discretion to decide whether to actually close down the parks or day use recreation areas. It was camping specifically that was prohibited. Some counties may be taking the position that the executive order doesn't apply to them. I'm not sure that it
I
was.
know one county just didn't know that county parks were even counted. So they just kept going and nothing happened to them.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that was Lynn County, if I remember right.
Well, then that's two counties that did that. So my assumption is that we need to work through state parks to get permission to open. But I may be wrong on that. The governor has designated the state parks as the contact for addressing park reopening.
And we're going to get the parks open as soon as possible, but I guess we can always discuss this on Friday's meeting.
Well,
We have a little bit of time.
or what if, in the meantime, would you mind if I contacted state parks and see what their reaction would be if we opened with either one out of either half or a third of our parking or camping spots available, either Friday the 1st or Friday the 8th?
Well, I guess it depends on the park. Some are, 10, 15 feet apart for camping spaces, and some are like 30 or 40 feet apart. So
Yeah, and that's why I said
I guess maybe bracket it by having the proper distance.
okay. And if it's
I'm
necessary
fine with you calling state parks.
Yeah, I am too, as well as the Forest Service.
Yeah, and I would just say and it sounds like you will be very, very explicit about how what we're talking about here is opening up overnight camping under the parameters you've set forth, because sometimes I think in the discussion, opening parks, it's not as clear sometimes whether people are talking about opening day use or day use fee areas, or opening up overnight camping, which is, I assume, is our biggest concern, as opposed to whether people can go to parks and not camp overnight.
So then a secondary issue is if we have an increase in breakouts, I assume we would then impose the restrictions again.
yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
And I want to be, and I would say, if that's why it's important to ask Oregon State Parks, because if the executive order is saying all private and public campgrounds should be closed, obviously whether that's going to be enforced by the state is one issue, but if we do have a negative consequence of that, then it could have its own implications.
So we'll wait and see before we make a decision, I guess, huh, John? Melissa?
So, two people were talking at the same time. I think you said that you thought that we should contact State Parks and U.S. Forest Service,
Correct.
and then I should do that. Okay.
And then we'll make a decision at that point. And
Right.
put this one aside, maybe. What do you think, Melissa?
That works for me.
Okay. Number 4?
I don't know that we need to, I just put it out there as something that was brought up, but I think we can discuss it on Friday, because there needs to be a resolution put together for it, and that's not related to coronavirus, but it's a drought declaration, because despite what the weather was like today, we've had an exceptionally dry winter and last fall, other than September
Yeah.
and spring. So I believe we'll take that up on Friday.
Okay.
And number 5 is just miscellaneous, which is anything else that needs to be followed up on, or new items that come up in the last couple hours as things emerge.
Megan, you have something?
I do.
Come on up. Maybe turn that one on over there. Megan has a question. John and Melissa?
I see her. I'm watching on YouTube.
Ah, okay.
So I got an email from AOC to put together some estimates for additional expenses and revenue losses related to COVID-19. And I'm assuming they mean everything except the public health response to COVID-19. And so I started putting some estimates together. Some of it's kind of difficult because we're still in the middle of it and it's hard to predict the future. So I was just wondering if any of you had any specific ideas. I can tell you what I have so far. Would that help? And then if you guys
Yeah,
have any
that
other.
would.
Okay. So I have any leave associated with the specific criteria that we are required to give people pay when they're on leave, because we do not get any tax breaks for that because we don't pay taxes. And then I have some materials and supplies, the economic development money that we offered, and most of the supplies are from safety and IT. And then revenue loss, I have planning is down a little bit in fees. The clerk is actually not down at all in their fees. Public safety, the commissary, and the civil fees, along with Bandon Dunes. I have all the parks numbers. I got them from Tammy, and we estimated a little bit more based on not just refunds, but if the parks were taking reservations or people that just walked in. Public Works, I got some estimations from Jessica for gas tax losses. I roughly estimated economic development lottery funds. And that's what I have so far. I am waiting for... Sorry, I'm waiting for some numbers from Rebecca at Health and Wellness for behavioral health side to see if they've lost any revenue from not seeing clients. But that one's kind of difficult because they just changed how they do everything, so we're trying to get a number together for that.
Timber sales, that's driven by the fact that because there's no building going on,
Yep.
and it was estimated that the building would be up strongly this year.
So you want me to talk to Lance and see what he thinks about that?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I mean, there's some money there.
okay. Any other
I'd
ideas?
like to see us this kind of leads into another conversation that we need to have afterwards, but I'm going to talk about seeing if we could contribute to that fund or to buy in some masks just to have on hand. So we could add that in if the board would like to do that.
Where's the money come from? I don't look at it as economic development. Maybe it could be construed that way, but
If we take out economic development, $5,000.
yeah. I'm looking at Megan, and
Sorry,
I'm not getting
not
it.
for where? For the office, or?
For Roger talked about a use to provide them to restaurants and motels, I believe. Could simply add to that package.
Even county employees, deputies, help road department people,
Yeah.
et cetera. People that come in contact with other folks in the courthouse, et cetera.
I wouldn't see that as economic development.
Well, no, not really.
Giving it to hotels and stuff like that, like Roger mentioned in his letter, I
Is-
could see that as economic development,
Yeah.
but not for the courthouse. That's my opinion.
I think it's a token.
My understanding is that the cost is fairly minimal, from Stowwood.
I don't know. Roger's talking about 20,000 for 50,000 masks.
What would we do with 50,000 now?
Well, it might go pretty quick if they're disposable. And from what I've read, when you're breathing through one, after an hour you got moisture all the way through it, so it's no longer effective. It has to be dry in order to be effective.
We could be
So
using
you
them
can use
right
quite
now.
a few of them in a day's time.
You could.
Put a diaper in there.
As long as you can't breathe through that, John. They're designed that way.
I've never tried, I don't know.
Anything else to be brought up?
Did anybody have any other revenue loss?
Yes.
Revenue
Stuff.
costs here too?
I don't have any other revenue costs.
I can't think of any. I do have one major burr under my saddle. Is that,
You're down.
yeah, I know, from 3 or 4, yes. I am really irritated with the state about them shipping a prisoner down and getting C-19, and now we have 3 of them. What really concerns me is the 300-plus employees who work there, who are Coos and Western Douglas County probably where they live, and somehow that is possibly exposed a whole lot of employees. And that really irritates me to the point of almost sending them a notice that we maybe intend to sue them for that. I don't know what basis, but I got that from the Attorney General of Missouri when he's going to sue China for allowing it to escape out of China. So I'm irritated and grasping at things, but I want them to notice that we're not happy. When I tried getting a hold of Department of Corrections, well, first Craig, the sheriff, tried, and then our health department tried, and they both got the runaround, and then Craig finally got a hold of a captain of the state police, and he copied me on the email, so I got a hold of the captain of the state police, who sent me to somebody at DOC, who sent me somebody at DOC, who sent me somebody at DOC, and all they did was give me the runaround. It really irritated me. And I don't think they are, and that's why on Monday I asked the governor if DOC could medically, not just somebody at DOC, but medically certify that those people are weed-free before they start sending them around the state.
It's very discouraging. I think we're better off just working with them, they give us a lot of money each year.
I got that
Community
part,
correction.
but they have to anyway.
Yeah, they do, but I think they also have
And
a
they
lot of
don't-
latitude.
They don't even
Some
give us enough to keep the jail per bed cost. In reality, it's about half of what it actually costs our jail to keep their parole and probation folks when they misbehave again.
I know all that.
We're only
but-
getting about half of what it actually costs us from the state to keep their people on parole who have offended again. So I'm not too worried about offending them anymore.
But your jail would be worse off if you didn't have that.
I got that part, but at some point, we need to say, we're not signing one of those agreements anymore unless you actually pay us the actual cost, not a profit, but the actual cost of what it takes to keep a prisoner in a jail per day.
You're changing subjects, Bob.
Yeah, well, I'm irritated about the whole DOC thing.
You
If
said
you can't
had
tell.
a burr in your saddle.
Yes, I know.
You're limited today. We can't go on and on.
I know. All right. Anything else? We're good. Thank you all.
Wait!
What?
You are so quick.
Oh, I thought you were.
Your rant on food that.
I thought
No,
you were asleep back there.
No, Coquille Hospital is doing antibody testing.
Oh, good. Yes, they are.
And I think all three of us should go down and do it.
Okay.
I'm going to.
When are you going to
You're gonna
go?
come back.
When are you going to do it?
This afternoon? You'll be here in a half an hour?
I'm going to do it first thing tomorrow morning.
Melissa
How
wanted
about
to do it.
10:30 tomorrow morning?
Pardon me?
Don't we have a, oh,
How
no,
about
we don't.
10:30?
We have a legislative call in from 9 to 10, right? So we could do it at 10:30. I'm good with 10:30 tomorrow. Anybody
They
else?
don't open till 10, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a meeting from 9 to 10.
I'll head that way as soon as the legislative call is
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. Usually it lasts
Great.
about an hour.
David Brocksmith's call.
Yes. The legislative call.
I couldn't get his agenda to open.
I didn't hear, what'd you say, John?
I couldn't get his agenda to open on
Oh,
the
okay.
email he sent.
Alrighty.
Is there a call tomorrow? I need to go through my email. Okay.
So 10 o'clock though, and then as soon as that's over, I'll head over there.
Madam Chair, are you going to, anything else?
Yes. Do we have anything else?
No.
Did we decide yes or no,
Sure.
or
Oh.
no on the
Eldon has something.
mask?
Eldon Rollins has something he wants to say.
You did not decide, John.
I know that.
What did John ask?
Did we want to decide?
The mask.
Or you want to think about it until Friday? Or just want, I can say no. I mean, you can say no to me.
We
I
don't,
like it, kind of.
we had a struggle just
I
trying
don't
to,
know that we have a funding source right now. I
That's
feel
the-
like we need to at least sit down, take a look at it.
We don't
if
have any.
If we wanted to buy some to give to the hotels, I'd be fine with that.
yeah.
I think
Think that-
if we want them for county staff, we need to tell county staff, like, the masks are 40 cents a piece, through SOWIB, and, you know, if you have some room in your budget, buy them.
We just don't have any,
I'm fine with dedicating them to the hotels and restaurants.
yeah, we just don't have any money in the budget for anything else other than coming out of economic development, which doesn't cover county employees.
You're right.
Now, so we could take it out of settlement.
Oh, Nat says,
Is he joking now?
he's
didn't
gone.
say that,
He just
no.
left.
He
so
just
missed
left.
that.
Even better.
Yeah.
He did not say that.
So do you want it, how much?
Let's ask Roger whether we can even get a little add-on to the order, or whomever.
Okay, you want to ask him or Melissa ask him?
Melissa, you
I
or
did talk to Kyle this morning from SOWIP,
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
and Kyle said that he's got a shipment of masks coming in next week, that he's got plenty.
Oh, okay.
So if we wanted to put 5,000 towards it, I'm sure
But
Kyle
there's-
would be more than happy.
The one that Kyle hasn't coming, they're not restricted?
They're not restricted.
Okay, so anybody could have them. But primarily
as a matter
for
of fact,
restaurants, et cetera.
Well, SOWIP actually has a website now called SOWIP Supply, I think it's called, he told me.
SWOIB?
Yes, I'm going to mess that up. Yes, I'll verify that that's the right, no, that is. And anybody can go on their site and order any sort of PPE that they have. They are selling it for a little higher for the general public if they just want to buy one mask.
Okay,
They're $1 for disposable personal face mask, $2 for the KN95 for the filter mask.
okay. That's
But,
Southwestern
and
Oregon
they're also selling
Workforce,
hand sanitizer.
Southwestern Oregon Workforce Investment Board.
Yes.
Okay.
So you just go down there and buy it, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
You can actually buy it online and they ship it to you, I think.
I see. Okay.
They don't want a bunch of people coming in for it. But yeah, you can buy hand sanitizer from them,
Wow.
16 ounces or 4 ounces. So,
Okay. Good to know. Okay, so
yeah.
what was Roger's intent? I think Roger's intent was to have it available for economic development, providing it to the restaurants and hotels, as I recall what he said in his letter. I'm not looking at it.
Well, it says to be provided to local stores to be utilized by shoppers.
Oh, okay.
I believe that
I'd
Coos
like to be
Bay's
a part of that.
intention. I believe Coos Bay's intention is to require all of the retail businesses to at least have masks available for people.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong.
So when they're in the stores, they would be covered up. Okay.
Okay, it's not that big a deal. Let's not do it.
Why?
Okay.
I thought it was a good idea.
We don't know
$5,000.
what to do. What do we do with it?
Huh?
How are we going to, okay, well, if you...
No, we can do it.
We
We could do
it.
We could do $5,000 of economic development to provide that to local businesses. I would be totally fine with that. I just
I
don't
move
see the
that
funding
then.
for
Good.
it. Okay,
Motion,
I'll second. Bob?
second, whatever.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Good.
All right. There we go.
Thanks,
Look at all the
everyone.
stuff we got done.
So are we meeting at 10:30 tomorrow at the, up there at Coquille Clinic?
Well,
Yeah.
we're meeting as soon as I can get there, or we can get there after our call-in with David Brock Smith, right?
Yes. You just put a tow strap on the back of Melissa's van. She gets you there in 15 minutes.
I know. That's a lot faster than I do. She's younger, Bob. Got better reflexes. I hope. At the speed she tries.
You never know. All right. With that, we are adjourned.
Oh.
Good idea. Bye.
They're gone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Hey, Bob.
Hey, John.
Not that I just like checking to see. We was going to ask you a question, but I'll ask it later.